Hey there, everybody. Chief Meteorologist Tim Buckley with you here. Thanks for having us here on WFMY Plus. We're here to give you an update on the weather situation going into Friday, and still kind of anticipating that we're going to have a storm that splits the area, some getting more rain, others getting more snow. But either way, we're looking at a weather impact and a winter weather impact, which is not something that we've really been able to say since, well, last winter. So let's get right to it. I'm going to dive into the details and things that you should know ahead of the system on Friday. It is a News 2 weather impact alert day, and kind of the timing on this is going to be early on your Friday. I'm talking about, even earlier than we initially thought. So this thing is trending a little bit faster, a little bit quicker as we get closer to it. Looks to me to be early morning on Friday through early afternoon that we would anticipate a mixed bag of snow in parts of the area, rain elsewhere, and some sleet and freezing rain in between. Main thing you need to know is that morning commute, that time frame of Friday morning's commute, could be a bit of an issue. We talk about slippery road conditions, especially if they're not treated. There could be some spots that could be snow-covered, slippery to start the day. And that's just always something that we caution against because, as we know, we don't get snow all that often, and even a light film or a light quarter inch of snow on some roadways, especially the elevated ones, always leads to wrecks, and we really don't want to see that. So let's take a look. This is Friday, 3 o'clock in the morning. Our model has it starting out pretty quickly. It might be a little too quickly. I do think there will be some time for this to kind of gather and do what we call saturate the atmosphere. So to get that snow to hit the ground, you've got to make sure the humidity is just right all the way down. Usually before the storm, there's dry air on the front end, and as that snow starts to fall or rain starts to fall, you raise the humidity of the air you're falling into, and eventually you get the whole column of air from the cloud to the ground saturated. And that's what you want to have to create any kind of precipitation, in this case, wintry precipitation. Now, our model has the rain-snow line right about here at about 5 a.m. Might be a little too far south. I think it could be a little bit north of that, but that's what it's showing. That could change in the next couple of hours. I tend to think it's probably a little far south, but it has the big thump of storm energy really before we get to the daybreak hour. This is around 7 o'clock in the morning. It's already breaking this thing up. So it's a short storm. It's not a super long-lasting event. Here's around 9 o'clock in the morning. Still some lingering sleet, freezing rain, regular rain, snow, depending on where you are. But this is breaking down and kind of moving away as you get closer to noon and lunchtime, and then into the afternoon and evening. Well, we're starting to dry things out a little bit. So there could maybe be some lingering issues in a few spots, but overall the trends are showing this to be earlier as we get farther along. So there's a look at your timeline. I do tend to think that the early morning is what we're watching more or less with this system. It's not so much going to be a middle of the day or an end of the day. We're talking about the early morning here as being your biggest impact. And that would be when you start to see roads getting a little slick, a little snow covered in some cases. But of course, it varies. It varies based on location. The farther north you are, the better chance for snow. The farther south you are, the more challenges you'll have to get anything along those lines. And as always, our rain-snow line tends to be right along I-40 or I-85. So I do think we'll have some challenges as to who gets what with the precipitation type. So here's a look, who's going to see what and where does it fall. I tend to think farther north you are, the better chance you have to stay all snow. The mixed bag in the middle, that would be a mixture of snow, sleet, and rain. I need to add rain into that graphic, but a mixture of snow, sleet, and rain in that case. And then the green is self-explanatory. That would just be mainly rain for those counties off to the south. Snow is likely, though, for at least parts of our area. That's pretty significant here that we're looking at this to be now a likely chance of snow and ice around the area. Let's kind of look at the snow potential. So overall, I do tend to think that with this system, Amounts are going to be light. They shouldn't be super impressive, but still there could be a couple of hours there where it's really coming down pretty good. And especially if we get that to happen before sunrise, that's when it can accumulate a little bit more efficiently. And what I mean by that is basically the earlier that it were to start snowing, the better chance you're going to have of it sticking really well. And that has to do with, the simple fact that it's happening under darkness. That matters a lot, actually. So I tend to think that can help you out in this case. So for most of the Triad area, we're playing it pretty close to the vest here. I do tend to think it's less than an inch. And part of the reason for that is uncertainty with the rain-snow line. There's uncertainty with the rain-snow line in the Triad area, as always. How long do you keep the snow going? There's also uncertainty of how much moisture you have available. I'm just not convinced that we're going to have a lot. So it's probably a quick hit of some moisture, and you're not going to see this lasting all day. So that'll limit your potential. Now, farther north that you would go, I do think there's potential for an inch or more, maybe up to 2 inches. As you get closer to Virginia, and in the North Carolina mountains, probably 2 inches or more is pretty likely. So that's kind of how I see this playing out right now. It would be a wet snow. This is not really a snowman situation or a sledding situation. It's all fairly light and probably pretty short-lived because we're not going to be bitter cold throughout the day. And if you switch over to regular rain toward the end of things, well, remember, that plays into it as well. So as we were saying, that rain-snow line very close to Guilford County, Forsyth County, Alamance County. And if you're watching from Lexington or Asheboro, that's not it. That's not it for you. Reedsville, Stokes County, Surrey, those areas have a good chance. But look how quickly this dries out. I mean, we're looking at noon here. It's pretty much done. It's pretty much done at noon, and that has been a change. That's been a quickening of this system overall. So just a couple of main points that I would bring up to you. This is going to be a mixture of snow, sleet, and rain before sunrise. That's kind of, the beginning of this is that it's going to start pretty early. A slippery coating of snow is likely for some during the morning commute, and that's going to be a bit of an issue because of the fact that it's before sunrise. Typically, we start to see problems and wrecks and things like that whenever we have any amount of snow on the roads or sleet too. So take it very slowly, allow extra time, plan ahead if you're able to do that. I think that's smart. That's definitely smart to do so just because of based on what we've seen in the past. The overall setup for this weather system is pretty classic. So what we see is colder air kind of sliding into place. This is going to slide into place ahead of the system, and we're seeing it right up here in New England coming up tomorrow night. So here we are on Wednesday. This is going to be Thursday night. Cold air is going to start to slide in up here, and that's a good position for that cold air to drift downward and kind of allow itself to be accessed during the storm. Now, it's only here for a short period of time, which is why we probably would switch over to rain at the end of this system. But on the initial thump, the initial burst of this, it probably comes down as a mixed bag of snow and sleet for those early morning hours. And then, as we said, it could change back over or more or less just dry up too, heading into Friday afternoon. So that's the setup. It might not be the last winter weather situation that we track, certainly not for the winter. But even in the short term, there's another system we might want to keep an eye on heading into Sunday. So in that case, we've got low pressure off the coast over here. We've got another piece of energy over here. Some models keep them separate. Others try and combine them. There is at least some opportunity for rain or snow going into Sunday night and Monday. So we're going to be busy, I think, for a little while, tracking all of these systems, trying to keep them keep them in our sights. For sure. Here's a model that does have that for Monday. So again, not totally sold on that idea, but it's, again, just going to keep us on our toes. The overall weather pattern is still going to be quite cold for the next 7 days. We're in the 50s tomorrow. So again, tomorrow's a good day to do whatever you'd like to do. Lots of sun to go around, low 50s. It's a pretty nice one. Clouds will thicken up as the day wears on. Friday, that's the storm day, so you'll have that morning impact. mostly just a morning impact there. So it's mostly the beginning of the day that we'll have to watch for that wintry mix of snow, sleet, and rain. And then by the afternoon, we're starting to dry out. And then the weekend, I'm going to keep it mainly dry for now for Saturday, Sunday, and into Monday, we'll have to keep an eye on that next system. That could be something that we watch a little bit more carefully. So anyway, that's what we got going on here from the Weather Center. I'm going to keep you up to speed on anything else. But in the meantime, here's a loop of some weather graphics and weather data as we get you up to speed on the next Weather Maker.